Hello, how are you? Good to have you back in my YouTube channel. My name is David, and today we are just very close to the end of the school year, or at least to the date when all the students, senior students, will sit their official examinations. Being British system, being IB system, May arrives and the students start to feel the stress of the exams. So I'm proposing today to work on self-management skills, a way to support the students in preparing their exams in a way that they can manage the stress, they can manage the tension of these dates. So in order to develop those self-management skills, I'm going to propose two activities with examples that we can have for all ages. And I have some examples for primary and of course some examples for secondary students as well. The examples will be based on mindfulness activities and something extraordinary that I came across a couple of weeks ago, which is haiku poetry. So the first thing I would like to discuss with you is some sentences. How can we bring about the calm in our surroundings and try to live a life in a way that we remove stress from our daily routines? So try then to walk as if you're kissing the earth with your feet. What we're going to do first is try to define what is mindfulness. And I'm sure that all of us have a clear understanding, or at least a close understanding of what mindfulness is. It is basically a human ability to be fully present. And I am not a mindfulness teacher. However, I can say that I'm somebody that I came across mindfulness and I try to practice it on my daily life, professionally and personally. So basically it's a state when we are aware of what is going on at this specific moment. And we're not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on. We're just aware. We try to analyze, we try to understand. So we can all be mindful at some point, and we can all practice mindfulness at any time, anywhere. So being mindful is helpful, in particular for our students, because it reduces stress, it boosts working memory, it gives a higher brain functioning, and increases clarity by lowering anxiety and depression. This has been proven, and even if we have students that say they practice mindfulness, it is something that the results are not immediate. We need to get used to it, and we need to practice it. So there are many, many ways to practice mindfulness. This is the most known way by taking a sit, finding a place where we are quiet, when we are calm, away from noise, away for anything that can disrupt. We can set a time. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, 10, it can be 20. It's up to ourselves. The best thing is to start with 5 minutes long practices and move on into longer ones. And while we see it, try to notice our body. We can sit, we can kneel, we can lay. We have to be in a comfortable position. We then need to feel our breath, following the sensations. And our mind will wander like these angry monkeys. And something that is called the monkey brain is the ability that our brain has to just wander at any time. Think about thousands of things. That's not a problem. We just need to make sure that we can come back to where we are and try to do this effort systematically. But we need to be kind. This is one activity that I propose to do with your students in class for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes before the class starts. Or even get them used to do it, so at some point they will do it on their own. There are, however, many types of mindfulness. We can do it while we're sitting, walking, standing. We can move, we can walk and meditate at the same time. We can even run, trying to feel our feet, the contact of our feet with the ground. We can have short pauses inserted into our everyday life during breaks, maybe in every lesson, having 5 minutes of mindfulness before we start the lessons. We can practice, of course, yoga. We can practice mindfulness through sports. So we just need to let the students know that there are many, many ways of practicing mindfulness. It doesn't have to be always sitting down. We also have a very interesting activity that we can do with the students, is the mindful eating activity. I try to do that with little pieces of chocolate. I bring a piece of chocolate to the class, and then I give a little piece to each one of them, and I invite the students to look at the chocolate first, look at the colors, the shapes, try to imagine if the food was making a sound, what sound could that be? Try to touch it, the feeling, how rough it is, how bumpy, smooth. Smell that piece of chocolate, that finally eat it, taste it, but with time. Take time to do that and realize that the precise moment when you're eating that piece of chocolate. You can do it with fruit. You can do it with many other things which are probably healthier to bring into a classroom. But I invite you to do that. It really works, and it's interesting to see the reactions of the students. You can also have some mindful breathing. So those are some shapes that you can draw on the board or on a piece of paper, and give the piece of paper to the students and ask them to breathe by following the line with their fingers. So just following the lines where it says breathe out, breathe in at a single and simple rhythm, and that will help them to calm and following their breath before starting the lesson or before starting an examination. I have seen students, one actually, walking around with his breathe board, and before every assessment spending 3 or 4 minutes with the finger following the breathe in, breathe out activity, and that helps to calm them down. You can do some mindful gratitude experience or exercise in class, asking them, how many times do you say thank you? How do you say it? Do you really mean it when you say thank you? And maybe get used to every time you say thank you on a day, stop for a moment and think, what are the feelings of saying thank you? How do you feel? Do you say it clearly? Do you say it too quickly? So that's another activity that you can do with your students, inviting them on this mindful gratitude experience and share with you their feelings the day after. Some spreadsheets, very interesting, in particular for primary students, when you invite them to think of what they see now, what they hear, what they touch. This is related also to the visual thinking routines from Harvard Project Zero. If you want to know what is it, I invite you to go and see and have a look at the session that is in this YouTube channel. Now, one activity that I particularly like to do with the students related to self-management skills, related to wellness, related to creativity as well, is what we call the haiku poetry. This can be done very, very easily. But let's see what haiku is. Haiku is a traditional Japanese poem that consists of 3 short lines that they do not rhyme. So it's not hard to do those poems because you don't need to think of the rhyme and looking for particular words. The origins of the haiku poems are very back in time, as far as the 9th century. But basically, it's more a type of a poem. It's a way of looking at the physical world, at our surroundings, looking at our feelings, at the nature around us, at our existence. And once we write it, it should leave us and the reader with a strong feeling or a strong impression. So we're not looking for beauty, we're looking for reactions when we write a haiku poem. It seems very simplistic at the beginning, but I can tell you that the experience of the students by doing it, with the time, you will see how the haiku poems change and how they become deeper and deeper in their meanings. So for primary, this is a potential activity. Okay, you can have a pre-writing, a drafting, and a revising. In the pre-writing, you can ask the students to write or to create a mind map with things around them, things that they can see, they can sound, they can hear, they can touch, they can smell. Just have a look and write a mind map. Then once you have your mind map, try to write a single sentence about one of these things that you saw, that you felt, that you smelled. Try to write one single sentence. And after that, Write out 2 other sentences, one after the other, and try to count the syllables in each one of them. And then think about, what does it mean? How is it related with something that you've seen, you felt, you saw? That's for primary. Look at some examples, some interesting examples written by primary students. Yeah, so I'm not going to read them for you. I invite you to read them. And at the beginning, you will realize, well, that's not much what it says. But at the end, thinking of a primary student being able to write something like that, it transmits lots of feelings, lots of hidden messages. Okay, I particularly like the one about the ladybugs. Yeah, ladybugs are red and have black spots on their wings. Experts at flying. Unbelievable. So at the end, you create even metaphors, isn't it? So an example of haiku poems for primary. For secondary, we can make it a little bit more complicated. The first thing we can ask the students to think, what kind of a haiku poem would you like to write? Yeah, are you going to write it in English or in your mother tongue? So you can have examples of trans-languaging activities. In classroom, we can support the integration of those new students who arrive in class with low levels of English, for example. Then maybe you want to write a haiku poem on a subject. So think about your subject matter and pay attention to small details, okay? And try to look around you and try to do the same thing that we do with a primary student. Try to bring your senses into it and try to move away from content and move into more your natural feelings at this present moment. Use short phrases, but short phrases that will evoke strong images, strong feelings, strong impressions. I think that's very interesting. Okay, and then you can use what Japanese say the kireji, or a cutting word. Is a cutting word that it's creating between the second sentence, if you want, should have a cutting word that breaks that haiku poem. So examples of haiku poems in secondary. Yeah, some of them that I would like to share with you. Yeah, you will see those are not from my students, obviously. Those come from different institutes, different schools around the world, but very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so you can have students bring in personal aspects, very intimistic aspects. You can have them writing more simplistic haiku poems. That doesn't matter. What you want them is to allow them to think, to reflect, to bring those self-management skills into what they do. And doing these haiku poems, this can be done in 5-10 minutes. It doesn't take lots of time. And then to finish, I invite you to download this extraordinary app, which is the Plum Village app. It's something that I did, and I invited my students to do it. And we use this app at the beginning of every single lesson there's one student leading an activity, selecting one of the meditations proposals of this Plum Village, which is a village that was created in France and very successful in terms of mindfulness activities. So again, I think it's the right time for us to develop self-management skills ourselves and support our students as well in order for them to face the exams that arrive in a couple of weeks and be calm and be successful, but not only for the exams, also for life. I would love to see comments from you saying in which way you develop mindfulness activities in class, if they work, if it's something that you're intrigued about and you would like to develop further. I really invite you to do that on a daily basis. At the beginning, it is hard to get used to this habit, to practice mindfulness 5 minutes, beginning of every lesson. With the time, in a couple of weeks, I can promise you that you will see the difference, and students will really appreciate having these 5 minutes of time of getting away from school, away from content, away from the stress, and moving more into themselves, and having this time to think, to reflect, away from screens as well, and just thinking about themselves, and how they can be more successful in school. I hope you liked this presentation and you found it useful. Thank you.